I came here 41 years ago with my father and my grandmother. My mother had died 2 years prior to us leaving the country in 1975, exactly on the fall of Saigon, it's called, April 30th. My father had 9 children. I'm number 5 out of the 9 children. So at the time, my brothers and sisters, the age range for all 9 of us were from 2 to 19. And so you could imagine for my father to teach us to become self-sufficient, it's going to take some time. But we have been very fortunate that with the kindness and the support from everyone, whether it's government or agencies like Jeff and Marjean and others, service providers to help refugees, we were able to get help at the beginning and to fulfill, to realize our American dream.
This may strike you as an unusual topic for an international affairs organization. Why are we looking at refugees' situation in Massachusetts? Well, our slogan at WorldBoston is the world in Boston and Boston in the world. And as we were talking about it, we realized, first of all, that there's a lot of just confusion and misunderstanding about how the system works. And also, that this is one of those topics where we really do see the intersection of the global and the local.
Through the work that we do at ORI, we have many captivating stories of refugees and immigrants that survive life-threatening situation and became example for resilience and strength. So I myself, like I said, carry the refugee identity with me. Because I came from Vietnam 41 years ago. So some of us in the audience might wonder how refugees end up in Massachusetts and what is the role of ORI in terms of refugee resettlement. So as a state refugee coordinator, I've been involved in discussion with PRM regarding to the annual refugee allocation for each refugee resettlement site throughout Massachusetts. So refugees end up residing in certain cities and towns in Massachusetts based on the following considerations. It's family reunification, ethnic community ties, cost of housing, public transportation to access services, and employment opportunity. You will hear more details from our panelists, Jeff and Marjean in particular to those. So now ORI contract with Program 2 community-based organization using federal and state dollars. And so we provide direct, and so through these community-based organization, they provide the direct services to refugees, asylees, and other eligible individuals. So ORI's federally funded refugee programs cover basic case management, employment services, employment-based ESL, youth and elder programs, health assessment, and other supportive programs, all of which are limited in focus and duration. So on the other hand, ORI state-funded refugee program include employment services for specific populations and citizenship services for eligible refugees and immigrants. In addition, refugees may access to mainstream state services based upon their individual eligibility. So we also have a welcome kit, which the governor and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Sudders that I mentioned, in order to be more welcoming to the refugees and immigrants in our Commonwealth. So this is the first time that we actually have that kind of welcome kit from Massachusetts. So I'm very proud to this fact. We want to be sure that we are a very welcoming state because we're the only one that have such a welcome kit. So among the successes that I would like to highlight to you are that we rank second on a national level in terms of job placement, and our unaccompanied minor refugee program and refugee health assessment program are among the best program nationwide. So I also would like to add that our refugees and immigrant population have proved to their neighbors and to all of us that they thrive to succeed. Many of them were able to work in a very short time after their arrival. As a matter of fact, an average length of 3 to 4 months after their arrival, they already found and be placed in a job. And I'm sure Jeff and Marjean can attest to that, and they will explain more. So, they open their businesses. Their kids excel in the school and colleges. They receive high scores. They receive scholarship. And so, needless to say, they work very hard. And we're very proud to their contribution to the state. So these successes won't happen without the support from our federal, state government, our community partners, and the dedication of these community partners like Jeff and Marjean. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their support. So on the 20th of this month, as you know, it is the World Refugee Day. And you and I have experienced that refugees and immigrants, their successes on a daily basis in different areas of self-sufficient individual and family in the economic, social, and civic life in the Commonwealth. And this is the mission that ORI promote for, and my colleague and I at ORI are sincerely working toward to ensure the full participation of our clients and to celebrate their successes, not only in June, but every day throughout the year. So therefore, next year, 2017, we would like to celebrate their contribution throughout the Commonwealth by having a celebration event come fall of next year. So I hope that you could join us, and more information will be sent to you all. So to learn more about the work that we do, I would like to welcome you to our table because if you would like to know how did we do, last year in 2015, we have the annual report for the first time. So please pick up a copy or you can download the information on our website. And the website is www.mask.gov/ORI. We also have a community partner directory where probably some of you would be wondering, who are they? Who are the community partner that you're talking about, who actually provide direct services to the refugees and immigrants? So please pick up a copy if you want to know about where they are located and what they do. So I welcome any question you will have later on. So thank you for being so talkative.
This gender makeup is pretty typical of those who do refugee work. About 75% of the people who receive refugees are women, and about 25% are men because it's hard work. And we're weak. There's only so much we can do. So the International Institute of New England was started in 1919. It was launched at a YWCA, the Young Women's Christian Association, in Lowell, Massachusetts, here in this Commonwealth in 1919. Our organization, the United States Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, the national organization we're a part of, got started at YWCAs across the United States over 100 years ago. They formed these Red Feather Societies in 1910, 1911 to receive immigrants from all over the world and to focus on helping women and children. The Boston Institute, the International Institute of Boston, opened in 1924. And refugees began being resettled in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we also work, in 1987. We were located at 1 Milk Street, the corner of Milk and Washington Street, and we're moving to a new location in Boston with an expanded space for programming at the China Trade Building, the intersection of Boylston Street and Washington Street. That's the building owned by the Boston Redevelopment Authority, and we're occupying the entire 3rd floor. So we hope you come and see us when we move in a few weeks in August. We serve 2,000 immigrants and refugees a year at our 3 sites, and we offer a variety of programming. Our core programming is refugee resettlement, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. We offer a variety of skills training classes to immigrants. We have ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Language, programming. We have a Central American minor reunification program. reunifies families from the Northern Triangle of Central America. We have a citizenship program. We help people with the application process. We help people with, we give citizenship classes to get people ready for the examination. And we work, we have a job placement program that helps immigrants, refugees, asylees, Cuban and Haitian entrants, and victims of human trafficking. Our core work is refugee resettlement, and I've been asked to talk about the organizations in the Commonwealth that work in the refugee resettlement area, and I'm going to touch upon that briefly, and then answer some other questions about the services that we provide, the challenges that we face in this work, and how we've adapted over the 100-year history of our organization. So the organizations that manage the resettlement process in Massachusetts are the International Institute of New England, and we focus on eastern Massachusetts, Lowell. We have a small office now at the New American Center in Lynn, and here in Boston. So we cover that part of the state. A Century of Care Alliance, which works in Springfield and Worcester. Catholic Charities, which works in Boston and Worcester. The Refugee and Immigration Assistance Center, REAC, which works in Boston and Worcester, and then Jewish Vocational Services, which works in western Massachusetts. The exact numbers are in Mary's publication, but the state of Massachusetts resettles through the formal refugee resettlement program sponsored by the United States State Department. We resettle about 1,800 to 2,000 refugees a year. Our organization here in the Commonwealth, between Lowell, Lynn, and Boston, resettles about 400 refugees every year. How we share best practices. Our organizations have quarterly consultations run by the Massachusetts Office of Refugees and Immigrants, run by Mary's department. And these are sessions in which we get together to share best practices, to talk about the challenges in the business, the challenge of resettling people, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, to talk about politics. There's a lot going on in that sphere right now, and to talk about ways that we can work together, help one another, serve one another, and support the refugees who are coming into the Commonwealth. You know, there's been a lot in the media about Syrian refugees in particular. I'm going to tell you a little story about a Syrian family we resettled recently in Lowell. We resettled, our organization has resettled 18 Syrian refugees to date. Most of the cases are Kurdish, are Kurds, they're ethnic Kurds from Syria who traveled to Turkey and then migrated to the United States through the UN, the United Nations Refugee Resettlement Program. We have 2 more cases allotted to Lowell in the coming weeks, 1 case allotted to Boston, and we hope we receive more people from Syria. The other day, I went up to Manchester Airport in New Hampshire to receive a mother and 2 sons who came from Syria. This was a single mom. She had twin boys by her side, 6 suitcases between them. Their entire lives were in those 6 suitcases. She told me she had a bunch of pictures and mementos in 1 suitcase that she was guarding very carefully, pictures of her family and her parents and her mementos from Syria. And then she had stuff for her boys. And this single mom was, had a strong look in her eye. She was coming to the United States to build a new life for herself and for her sons. And she was excited to begin her life in an apartment in Lowell. Our team received her, and I was there to welcome them. And I can tell you this woman has grit. She's been through very difficult circumstances in Syria, and the United States and Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, is doing the right thing by welcoming this family and other families to the Commonwealth. When we receive, how resettlement really works tangibly, is that we meet a family at the airport. They've been assigned to us through our national network, the United States Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. There are 9 voluntary organizations known as VOLAGs across the United States, 9 organizations that resettle refugees from around the world through agreements with the United States State Department. So they assign us a refugee family. This particular family has a U.S. tie. They have a relationship in the Boston area. The mom has a cousin in this area. We receive her at the airport. We have an apartment furnished for them. We get about $1,125 from the federal government for that family, $900 for our resettlement efforts, and the rest we raise locally from partners, church groups, community organizations. It's a public-private partnership. It does not work with federal money alone. So we get the apartment furnished for the family. We collect housewares, goods, clothing, that sort of thing, and cash from people in the community. We work really hard to develop good relationships with landlords so we can get these apartments ready for families and get them at a good price. And then we enroll the families in public benefits. They're categorically eligible for public benefits when they come to the United States, and they're categorically eligible to work. We have English programs to get them up to speed in English. We have a cultural orientation program that orients them to life in the United States, culture in this country. Massachusetts is a little bit different than other parts of the United States, and so they've got to learn how we speak, among other things. And then we enroll them in a health care plan. About 50% of our families have been tortured, of our refugees have been tortured, and so we refer them to mental health programs in the Commonwealth. We do an assessment, our caseworkers do an assessment, and refer them to services. We accompany them on medical appointments. A lot of the people that have come to this country have suffered greatly. And then we enroll their children in public schools. We accompany them for about a year. The first year in the country, we have a pretty close relationship with them, and we stay in touch with them as much as we can beyond that first year in the country. Within 90 days in the United States, we have to find any adult who is able to work. We have to find them a job. And so we work right away to find them a job. The biggest obstacle to employment is language, and so we are constantly working, offering them language classes. We have volunteers who come and speak to them in English and try to tutor them in English, and that gets their skills up so they're more marketable. The main challenges in our work here in the Commonwealth, and this may be true around the country as well, but the main challenge is, first of all, is finding housing. This is a real expensive area. The International Institute has figured out a way to address this issue in the Boston area. We primarily settle, almost exclusively now, settle in Boston or Lynn, single males. And these are hard cases to resettle. To become a refugee, to become classified as a refugee, you go through about a 2-year process run by the State Department with all sorts of background checks, all sorts of security checks, a health screening, orientation overseas, and then you're accepted into the United States. So we resettle single males in Lynn. And in Dorchester and other parts of Boston, we found housing for them. They work extremely hard. They're younger for the most part. Some are trying to bring their families to the United States. They'll work a lot of hours, entry-level jobs. But and the reason why we do that is because housing is so expensive in this area. It's easier to place families in Lowell and in Manchester. Another challenge in the resettlement field here in the Commonwealth is the stipend from the federal government is limited, and the pace of arrivals is challenging. There are weeks where there's not many arrivals, and then there's the summer surge, July, August, September, when dozens and dozens of refugees come week after week, and our people are working a lot of long hours to find them housing, get them placed, and then to serve them. And then the final challenge is that there's high barriers to integration. They don't all know English, so we work hard to teach them English. The culture is new. They have a desire to work, to find a way to make it in this country, and so we are constantly working with them to help them become successful and to help them integrate into life in the United States. And they're eager. One of the first things that you realize when you meet a refugee family is they are relieved to be in the United States. They have finally made it to this country. Some of them spend 17 years in a refugee camp. The 2-year resettlement process, the 2-year process to get approved to come here is a long process, arduous process. Not everyone is accepted because there may be one little crazy thing in their security background check that it's unexplainable, and so they can't come. But when they come here, they're away from the violence they experienced in Syria or Iraq or wherever they're from. They're safe, they're at home, and they're excited to begin a new life. And that's the joy of our work. Our organization has changed over a 100-year history, but there's a lot of things we've always done for 100 years. The Red Feather Societies, which became the International Institutes all across the country, have welcomed people, taught them English, helped them to find jobs, helped them to find housing, helped them to integrate into life in the United States. Those same things have been going on for a long time. What has gotten better is that In 1980, the United States government, President Carter signed the Refugee Act of 1980. That set up a very formal process for bringing people into the United States, and we now have a much more formal process of refugee resettlement with lots of monitoring that can be challenging, but is also good for the quality of our work. So that's how we've changed. So I look forward to the Q&A, and thank you for having me here.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
So my name is Marjean Perhot. I am the director at Catholic Charities Refugee and Immigration Service Division, which is part of Catholic Charities that some of you hopefully have heard of. We've been around since 1903, and our agency, even though now we've evolved to about 90 programs and 27 sites, we actually started serving immigrants who were new to the Boston area at the turn of the century and needed places to put their children for daycare while they were working in the mills and really building up this great Commonwealth. So we have a very long history of serving refugees and immigrants. And in our division, we have refugee resettlement services, which I'll speak to a little bit, but we also offer community interpreter services, which is a social enterprise. So for any of you that might be interpreters and want to make a little extra money, you should definitely check out our table in the back. But we're able to deploy interpreters throughout the Commonwealth, and then the proceeds from that help to manage and meet that public-private partnership that Jeff referred to in his remarks. So it keeps us in business with refugee resettlement. And we also offer immigration legal services and outreach and education, which is something that I'm able and happy to be doing here today. So we serve in total at, just in our division, about 17,000, but Catholic Charities, we annually serve around 200,000 people a year, and that's throughout a pretty large geographic region, which is basically northeastern Mass, with the exception of Fall River and the Cape area. So I was asked to do, as I kind of put it, some of the easy questions. So I get to talk about the refugee populations coming to the Massachusetts. But first, I want to just always be sure that we're giving a global perspective. Let's keep in mind that there are almost as many people displaced in the world as there have been since World War II. And that's in this year. And that's tragic. You know we see the wars in Syria, we see what's happening in Iraq, but what we don't see are the continual displacements of people. If we talk about Palestinians who still are displaced, if we look at various people in Asian nations, Burmese, Bhutanese, who have been living in camps and in untenable situations for years and years and years. And so of that, about 60 million people who are forcibly displaced from their homes, which averages about 42,500 people a day that have to flee. There's about 19.5 million people who are registered as refugees, meaning they meet a definition under the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, which most states subscribe to. So of that 19.5 million, the United States, being the most generous and the most welcoming country, takes in less than 1% of those refugees every year. And we, again, are the most welcoming and generous state that receives refugees. Now, you might say, well, but we heard, Germany's taking 200,000 or whatnot. That's a different type of category, which really would be a whole lecture series or a day-long workshop to explain. But in terms of refugee resettlement, we do the most. And so this year, the government has committed to welcoming 85,000 refugees. We're a little bit, almost at halfway now. There's been 45,571 refugees admitted as of today. But we are almost into the fourth quarter of the end of the fiscal year, and so Jeff mentioned that surge that we get from July to September, so we do expect that. That's not good for anybody, but I always try to remind my team that that means that those slots are being used and people are getting the chance to come, even though you might be at the airport 5 days a week at 3 in the morning, but this is their chance and the one chance that they get until they have to get back into the queue. So, of that, less than 1%, and then of those that come to Massachusetts, we have seen about 1,042 refugees this year so far. So our year is based on a federal fiscal year starting on October 1 and ending on September 30th. And the populations in Massachusetts pretty much mirror what's going on in the rest of the country, with some small exceptions. Massachusetts, as we all know, is such a vibrant and diverse state. And so we tend to take refugees from all corners of the globe. So when I look at our numbers, in fiscal 15, The other category pretty much rivaled our top country of origin, which was Somalia, with about 394 people. But we had 349 people that ended up in an other category. So who are those people? Those are Burundis, Eritreans, Ethiopians, Central African Republic, Chad, Cameroon. It's a whole smattering, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, Ecuador, Colombia. We even had, I know in our agency had refugees coming out of China and Palestine, which was a group that we hadn't seen, in Pakistan, that we hadn't seen in a long time. So our top 5 countries of origin have actually changed a little bit from years past, where we had a high number of Burmese people coming here, particularly those that were in Thailand and Malaysia. Well, those refugee programs are actually closing on those ends, meaning that the people that have wanted to come have applied, have been accepted, and have arrived. So those, and they're weaning down the program. So those numbers are going to decrease. But what we see now is that the other category, at least for this current fiscal year, is about 250 other. And so I kind of went through some of those groups already. And then Somalia still remains our top country of origin, and followed now by the Democratic Republic of Congo. So this is something that in the resettlement world we have been expecting for a number of years. I mean, I remember being on conference calls and at different conferences talking about when are the Congolese from the DRC going to arrive. These are people that are from eastern Congo and the Goma region who have just seen some of the worst atrocities, as most refugees have. But in the Congolese context, you have a lot of women who have been subject to sexual violence and torture, a lot of single female-headed households, children that are witnessing violent atrocities if they're not victims themselves of that. So we are happy to see that the U.S. is honoring its commitment to welcome high numbers from the DRC. And then we have Iraq, refugees still coming out of Iraq, because as we know, that's still not a stable place for people. And Bhutan is still hanging in there, so still some Bhutanese that are, they're still in Nepal, closing down that camp there, but they'll be arriving. And then Eritrea has come up to be the top 5. Now, I think, we've probably heard a lot about Eritrea and the human rights abuses that go on in that country. We actually had a soccer team that defected a couple years back, and they were assigned to us here in Boston, and it was just amazing to hear their story and how they managed to escape their handlers at an international soccer conference to be able to resettle here. But Eritreans, and particularly people crossing the Sinai Desert in between to get to Egypt or to Israel, are subject to severe torture, kidnapping, ransoms. It's really horrific what's going on in those areas. So I know I'm telling you a lot about what happens overseas, but it's important to understand in the context of the people that we are resettling here. So I have definitely many more statistics if you would like to see them, but I think kind of the takeaway is that Massachusetts is, we follow national trends. I mean, we're not one of the top states. Your top states doing resettlement are kind of what you would expect: California, Texas, Washington, New York, Illinois. But one of the things we have, and that's thanks to people like Mary and her group, is excellent state refugee program. We are known as one of the top in the country. And I've been doing this work for 20 years, so I can say that with a lot of certainty. So how have refugees contributed to the Commonwealth? Well, this is kind of a hard one. I don't have a ton of data on that, but what I do have is a lot of stories. And I encourage you, next time you're at Logan Airport, if you're buying one of those really expensive pizzas from Wolfgang Puck, I guarantee you probably one of my refugees is in the back kitchen, either helping to prepare it or washing the dishes that were used to make your pizza that's overpriced. Just my little opinion. But refugees, and I think we have a really wonderful example of refugee contributions in my colleague here, Mary, who has just been a phenomenal leader of Massachusetts Refugees and Immigrants for the last year. And the many predecessors that also followed her, too, were former refugees. And I think that says a lot about refugees contributing back. We have refugees, many of our offices hire refugees to be our case managers, to help other newcomers. And so our staff is about 50-50 between refugees and maybe American-born, if you will, staff members. And that's really important for linguistic reasons, but also, too, for cultural competency and understanding. And so, refugees, what I have seen is that parents make so many sacrifices for their children. And their children really do succeed. I mean, we've had Harvard graduates that we're very proud of. I know one of my longtime colleagues, our program manager, who's been with me for 22 years, his 2 kids are at BC High. One is getting ready to graduate. They got a big scholarship. These are the small but very important contributions that you see. So we're raising a generation of really productive citizens. And, if you go out into the shops, if you go anywhere around Dorchester, area, you'll see all kinds of Vietnamese stores and great food. And these are important contributions that really create the rich and vibrant fabric that we have here in the Commonwealth. And so how can you help with this work? I hope that from what we've talked about, it maybe energizes you to want to do more. We certainly have volunteer opportunities. It's certainly between Jeff and myself and the other refugee serving agencies. But I think one of the most important things you can do is educate yourselves, like you're doing today. There is so much misinformation about refugees and refugee resettlement, about security background checks. I mean, if I hear one more time how Syrians slip through the ropes, it's just nuts. I mean, I talk to these Syrians. We know how long they're waiting. We know how long Iraqis are waiting. For the last 2 days, I have spent most of my time trying to get a family out of Kiev they've been waiting to resettle with their relatives here. They're persecuted evangelical Christians, and the mother is about she has to have a surgery or she probably will lose her life in the next 2 weeks. They can't get a surgery in Kiev, even by begging and bribing and offering to pay. And so I've been working very closely with our national and with the office in Moscow to get that family here. These are people that have been waiting 4 years and have been vetted and do not pose a threat to our society. But these are the types of cases that we're seeing, and that's what we want also for you to know and to educate and help others understand the refugees are here to contribute. I mean, refugees are a very, very small population of the foreign-born that come to the United States. And they are here at the request of the U.S. government. They're here because they are of special humanitarian concern. And so educating yourself, like you're doing today, is so important. And yes, working alongside with us is wonderful. Grace Gaskill, who's our Vista, and she's here today from my team, has a table in the back with some really practical hands-on stuff that you can do. And there's also a lot that we really need help right now, and I think if you heard us mention, is the challenge of housing. And housing is going to really continue to be a big thorn in our side in the Commonwealth, and it will impact how many refugees we can receive if we do not crack it somehow. I've been working for the last probably 6 months on trying to find creative ways to find affordable housing. Just like all people here, yourselves included, I'm sure, it's very expensive to live. But the government looks at that, and they know, the State Department sees what the rental rates are here, and they say, well, it looks too expensive for refugees to survive. So what kind of creative partnerships can we come up with? I'm working with a few faith communities to look at alternative housing options, look at rehabbing old buildings. So if any of you are in the real estate market or have those creative ideas, that's another wonderful way that you could help us ensure that refugees can continue to come to the Commonwealth. And I think that, kind of in closing, I'll just say I'm happy to answer questions. I'm trying to also be conscious of our time. But again, thank you for your time and for welcoming us here. That means so much. Thank you.
There's a lot of people who were coming, and the list that you gave was impressive of the diversity, but it didn't include most of the people who I think of as refugees, who are Salvadoran, Honduran, from the Northern Triangle, as you were talking about. So are you just working with refugees who have been sent to you by the State Department, or can refugees access services through you through other avenues?
Okay, that's a great question. What is a refugee?
Sure, and maybe we should have thought about defining that first. So refugee is a particular status in the U.S. Immigration law context, and it's also an international status that is given to somebody. So all the refugees that we've been talking about are people who are vetted and approved as refugees under that 1951 convention, which describes the definition of a refugee, which is a person that, based on one of 5 well-founded fears of persecution cannot avail themselves of the protection of their government. So if somebody, you'd have to be a member, a persecuted religious minority, persecution due to gender, race, religion, membership in a particular social group, and political opinion. Right? Yes, those 5. My attorneys would be proud of me. And then you have to go through that vetting process that we've talked about. But, I had mentioned there were 19.5 million designated refugees. So those are all people that meet that condition. And then to come to the U.S., you have to meet our definition under the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is very similar to the UN definition. And so people that we sometimes think of as refugees, like those coming from Central America, many of those, especially the kids that came a lot in 2014, they're refugees to us because we know they're fleeing the horrific gang violence there and that they have no other choice but to leave. But to the United States, they're not. They have to come in and they have to be admitted, and then they can make a claim for asylum. And if they're approved as asylum seekers, and that's a very lengthy process, and it's a process that, is very difficult for people who don't have an attorney, quite frankly. And if they're approved, then they are approved on those same grounds of persecution, and they can then come to our programs for specific services and benefits that refugees would get. But refugees are a really small part of the people that are approved as legal immigrants in the United States. So, and you also, the other important thing to always remember, you have to be outside of your country of origin. I mean, there are some exceptions, but so if you were thinking of people in China, for example, maybe a persecuted religious minority, that Chinese person would have to get to another country and then ask for protection from that second country, and then maybe they would be considered eventually to enter the United States if that was a population that we were going to take in a given year. So we do have some restrictions on we can't give out all these types of benefits and services to people that don't have that refugee designation. Now, there are some other populations, Cuban and Haitian entrants. So Cubans or Haitians that make it to the United States can be entered or paroled in, and they can get some benefits under the refugee program. And Amerasians, certain victims of trafficking, people who are certified victims of trafficking, and some of these unaccompanied minors, if they're coming through the new Central American refugee program, they can be eligible for to come in as refugees. This was part of the Obama's administration to try to stem the flow of migration, which really isn't working, but hope there's nobody from the White House listening. Because they're still coming because they're fleeing for their lives. So it's a real specific category of people. I probably gave you a lot of info, but I hope I answered your question.
Mary?
If I may add that in our service brochure at our info table, we have the definition of what each category is, whether you're a refugee, whether you're asylees, or you're a member of the Cuban Haitian entrant program, or you're a victim of human trafficking, like Marjean mentioned. So we already have that defined in our service brochure, so we can give you one. Thank you.
I am a refugee. My family was resettled in D.C. from former Yugoslavia in '97. And my mom still works in refugee services in D.C. And I've volunteered at a few places, mostly for ESOL services for job placement. And one of the things I've seen anecdotally that I don't know if you've seen in your work is I've actually come across a lot of highly skilled workers that are refugees, people who have degrees in law, medicine, engineering, and they're not able to be placed in comparable jobs, and they're not able to find comparable education where they can use their skills in the U.S. So I'm curious what you've seen in your work and if you've seen any creative, innovative initiatives to kind of help people with those skills.
Yeah, I'll start that, and then Marjean or Mary can add to it. About back in November, we had an event, and our speaker was a refugee from Iraq who worked at a chemical plant, oversaw 500 or 600 people, and man about 60 years old. So obviously, multiple degrees, oversaw a complex organization, and he's doing entry-level work in the United States because he can't get a job at that level. So, that's the sad story of a refugee story. That's the difficult part of it, is that you have people that come to the United States that might have a law degree that's not recognized here in this country. They might have a medical degree that's not recognized. They might have another degree that's not recognized. Now, we do try to put people in a field that they're interested in. So we've actually placed in Manchester, we placed a gentleman who had a chemistry background in a university, working in a lab. So we have some success stories like that. And there's legislation, I guess, at the State House that's trying to make it easier for certain professionals who have certifications from other countries to get employment here in the United States.
Do you want to add anything?
Yes, if I may add, I could understand perfectly what you're saying because we recruited Dr. Falah Hashem, who became my chief of staff. He's been a practicing physician, internist, actually, from Iraq for many years. So when he came here, he passed all of his medical requirement to practice. But except he couldn't find residency. And for 3 years, he's been struggling to be able to find any hospital that would accept him into the residency program. So in the meantime, I was fortunate enough to recruit him to work for us. He's our chief of staff. So at least from our small level, we try to help in any which possible way that we could. I understand that there is an effort done by the MIRA, which is the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugees Advocacy Coalition, alongside with other partners trying to work on this particular issue. So just want to put that out. So in case if any staff here from MIRA, they can talk more about it. Is there any MIRA staff here? No? Okay.
And I'll just add two quick things. I know the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement is here, and they are also working on these issues. And then I know through ORI in the past, they've had what we call recredentialing grants, career laddering programs that are part of the refugee employment services that refugees can receive. So it is definitely something on a national level and here on a local state level that's really important because you're losing a lot of talent, people that are very, very talented. And then my second question is, does your mom work for USCCB by chance? Zorica? Yes. I know your mother very well. Just tell her, she'll know Boston's always late with their reports. Yes, give her my best, please. I've met your mom on a number of occasions. She's amazing. So another example of how refugees contribute back. At our national office, we have many refugees who are phenomenal in helping us to do this work. So nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you.
In your talk, you mentioned it's a comment you made about when you saw one of the refugees working at the pizza shop, you used the term "my refugee," and I'm just wondering, is this the proper way to address? And I know you meant the best intention, but I just couldn't help but think of recent comments, basically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you. I take that comment. I think we at Catholic Charities really embrace our clients. I think a lot of us really consider refugees as our family. The refugees spend probably more time with us than they do anywhere else. And so when we see any refugees, I always, if I'm traveling and I see refugees with an IOM bag in an airport, I will stop and say, hi, welcome to the United States. I'm not your caseworker, but you're part of us now, and you're here and you're welcome. So we definitely don't mean it in a possessive way, but more in a welcoming way. Our refugees come to us and say, well, you're my agency and you're my caseworker. So I think it kind of can go both ways. And we do have a refugee on this panel, Miss Mary Truong, who is a very successful example of success coming here as a young child fleeing Vietnam. So
thank you very much for that kind remarks. But if I may share a little bit, I came here 41 years ago with my father and my grandmother. My mother had died 2 years prior to us leaving the country in 1975, exactly on the fall of Saigon, it's called, April 30th. My father had 9 children. I'm number 5 out of the 9 children. So at the time, my brothers and sisters, the age range for all 9 of us were from 2 to 19. And so you could imagine for my father to teach us to become self-sufficient, it's going to take some time. But we have been very fortunate that with the kindness and the support from everyone, whether it's government or agencies like Jeff and Marjean and others, service providers to help refugees, we were able to get help at the beginning and to fulfill, to realize our American dream. All of us have been college educated. My father did not have to spend a cent for us because we believe in the value of hard work and determination to make it. So if I may brag a little bit, I have all 6 members out of 9 that have graduate degrees. 2 are scientists. One of them have actually invented the chemical protective clothing for the soldiers. So he's been cited in National Geographic, and I don't want to exaggerate or to brag too much, but that's an example I have, right? I apologize. Because, because when we talk about contribution, I want to give this specific example, and it's just not talking. So we have been very fortunate. So I would like to see that more of us that become known for the work that we do, for the contribution that we've been able to make. And that's because due to the help and the generosity of everyone here. Marjean, Jeff, WorldBoston, the government, and the churches. When I came, there was no refugee resettlement centers at all. Remember, this was 1975, and the Refugee Act came 1980. So we really struggle a lot. So learning English to survive, and as quickly as possible, and especially to find work, you must. So we all survive. I haven't seen any refugee that's really been homeless because they try to make it. And so let me know if we have any refugees that are homeless right now. But I do believe that they're here, to survive and to make it. So with the help of all of you, once again, they will make it.
Is there a disconnect or a lack of information with your organization and between the people who are fleeing countries out of crisis? And they don't know where to approach, what to do, So is that a big challenge, or how can they approach you?
So people in country who
Yeah, just escaping and just arrive and, in crisis and they don't know where to go. Information.
So would you mean people that don't come through a formal refugee program?
Yeah, out of desperation,
Just left, right? And maybe they came here on a visitor visa and they don't know where to turn. So at Catholic Charities, anybody can walk in our doors and access what we call basic foods, basic needs services, and that is kind of information and referral services. They wouldn't necessarily always get to our program because the services that we offer for refugees are very prescribed by federal funding. But of course, if anybody comes in to see us, we would ask you, well, what is it that you need? Are you looking for legal services? Are you looking for shelter? We can't necessarily always provide all of those things, but we wouldn't turn somebody away. We would want to find out what you need first. And so in my little part of Catholic Charities, we have, certain eligibility criteria that's dictated to us by our funding. But if somebody just calls up on the phone and says, I don't know where to turn, I'm here, I'm stuck, we would refer you to what we call basic needs services. And those, we have 13 locations throughout the area for that.
Just quickly, I'm wondering, particularly, Mary, you can probably answer this in brief. What role does a particular governor or mayor have in choosing which refugees will come to their destination?
Well, so the governor or the mayor do not have the any role in deciding or choosing how many refugees do come here. It's from Department of State, and Jeff and Marjean can explain more. But basically, the governor and the mayor have been very welcoming. Any number that have been.
No, I don't mean these our own governor and mayor, I mean in general.
In general, no. The governors and the mayors in general can voice their concern or their issues, but basically they don't have any decision-making in deciding how many coming to their state or where would the refugees come from.
Okay, thank you.
It has to be coming from the Department of State.
So it would be illegal for so you read when the Syrian refugee situation bubbled up in the fall, there were governors in different states who said these people can't get public benefits, and that was, they were told by courts that you can't do that.
You can't do that.
So that
But-
they have no authority to do that.
But there are governors right now in certain states have said, we're not going to make it easy for refugees to access anything, but the agencies on the ground like us would still receive those refugees, because it's a federal program, it's not a state program.
Exactly.
Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, panel, for a very enlightening.
I don't believe that the people are illegal. I don't use illegal as a noun. Many people choose to do so, and I think that some of our Republican candidates have certainly added a lot more heat than light to an already incendiary debate.